All right, Jacob Linklater here, and yeah, we're back with another Drew episode this week. This time I'm actually on time and getting this out, which is, let's be honest, a little surprising for me because I've read a lot of first. But this week's episode of Doctor Who is Lucky Day, written by Pete McKeague and directed by Peter Horn. And as with all of these sort of thoughts discussions, there's going to be a lot of spoilers, and this is one where I can't really go into why this episode is kind of a complete mixed bag for me without spoilers. So this is your final warning. Okay, so Lucky Day is has the problem of Pete McTeague's general sensibilities towards writing political stories. When he wrote Kerblam, he thought he was writing an anti-capitalist thing, where when then he eventually does the big twist where, surprise, it's not capitalism that's the problem. It's, I guess, that, one person was mad. It's not a Kerblam's actually really a messy episode. Um, and Lucky Days not so much like that. This isn't Doctor Who doing an outright conservative episode. It isn't. It's largely taking its pot shots at the online right. Trouble is it doesn't actually go anywhere to examine why the online right actually happens and as a whole. It's very center left in understanding the mechanics of how people are drawn to the online right, and as well as, well, what I like to call the unit problem. So unit is a big part of this episode. The entire premise is that this is our Dr. Light episode of the season. We're actually following Ruby Sunday, played by Millie Gibson, who is nice to see back. She gives a very good performance. Pretty much everyone in this episode is giving a good performance. Ncuti Gatwa gets an amazing speech at the end that is really nice, but it doesn't have nearly as much of the actual episode to back it up. Problem is that the first half of the episode plays out kind of like Love and Monsters better. And I will say this is much better than, say, Love and Monsters, which is an episode that just has contempt for its audience. This doesn't. This is very much like, you think, oh, Ruby has a boyfriend who has met the Doctor when he was really young, and oh no, he had a slightly abusive mother. And mind you, that abuse is literally one scene where we see his mother actually there, and you that's honestly kind of a problem, and it could have been a bit more interesting to explore just what made just what made this character tick and sort of fall down this rabbit hole. Like, a lot of this is trying to do the it's it's trying to do the thing where it's examining how the conservative movement doesn't actually pay attention to what the reality of their eyes. Like, it turns out, surprise, Ruby meets this man, Conrad Clark, who has a podcast all about meeting the Doctor, and it's very sweet. And he gets Ruby on the podcast, and they have a very sweet relationship. He a year ago he actually saw them at a distance, um, trying to stop something called the Shriek, which is this alien hunter that releases a pheromone that will attack you and allow it to track you, and um, that eventually kill you. And then, oh no, surprise! He's actually a conservative who wants to bring down unit as a concept because that's what the tax is going for. And they're funding people. They're all cranks, and they hire disabled people, and I don't have necessarily a problem with that in theory. I think it's actually a swing that should be made. I don't know if Pete McTeague or even Rusty Davies as showrunner necessarily understands how exactly to examine that because it feels very weak. Mainly because, well, it's the unit problem of units a government agency. It's a government agency with power and authority. So having someone claim to be an anti-establishment to take down unit and then trying to present that as taking down they're trying to take down the good guys. You're accidentally making the like the authorities look like the good guys. Now, Doctor in the past was able to thread this needle mainly in the 70s for mainly because of approach. Like when Unit was established in the 1970s, it was a government agency. Yes, it was a paramilitary organization, but it wasn't always presented as a good organization. There's now this current fandom mindset that I think really started in the mid Moffat era when Stephen Moffat started to bring back Unit proper. Interestingly enough, Russell T Davies, during his first era, had a couple of episodes where Unit would appear and have some shadiness. And there are points in this episode where it feels like we're going to get to that. And then we don't. Unit has lost all of its edge. Mainly, and I think that's literally because of its we're capitulating to the fandom perception of Unit as the good old days where the Doctor worked happily with the Brigadier, and it's this it's this it's myth making. It is making a myth out of Unit because I think people forget that in Unit's third appearance, the Brigadier committed a genocide on orders, and that uneasiness was there until the end of the Pertwee era. And then Unit was essentially phased out almost immediately. Unit had an edge. Unit could make mistakes. Also, Unit stories were very important because usually, in terms of a villain, they would have a villain be a government representative, mainly a conservative government representative. And Lucky Day doesn't have that. It wants to take shots at the online conservative movement, but it doesn't want to actually reflect anything on Unit itself, and that is where the episode very much gets problem. There's a moment at the climax where it looks like Kate Stewart is going to actually allow the alien shriek to kill Conrad Clark. And she doesn't because I think she has to be a good guy, which I'm gonna be honest, I think that is the wrong move. I think this is a story that would be much more impactful if we gave Unit that edge that no, they are in fact willing to let people die, let people who do not have do not ha- basically have let people die if they aren't willing to listen and be sensible. They live in their own little reality of okay, you can believe all this nonsense, but the consequences are you're gonna die, and we can't save you. Essentially, doing a story of doing you are doing a point where you're playing yourself to the point where your own death, which is, let's be honest, something that a lot of the online right does. They do. But this is also a script by T, who, as a writer, just doesn't seem to understand how to actually integrate any of the messaging into his script. And a lot of it, I think, is McTeague. Russell T Davies isn't credited as a writer on this episode at all. And McTeague gets so close to making this something good, but there are just these little things where if you just change one thing, a lot of things would fall into place. He is almost there. Part of the problem, oddly enough, I think, is that fandom problem. The Conrad as a villain is a reference to Robot, like the think tank from Robot from 1975. Pete McTeague as a writer really wants you to know that he is a Doctor Who fan. This is something that is consistent with his work. And that's because he's written all of the Blu-ray trailers, which are nice, sweet. They're little 3-minute snippets, but they're not stories. They're not plots. They are just little vignettes. And it seems that he can make a fun, fan-pleasing vignette, but it seems to struggle when it comes to something deeper, which is a shame. Because I was actually really enjoying this season. I think this is probably the first that's closest to a miss. Not the worst episode ever. Certainly, there are things I like. Millie Gibson is great. I actually really liked Gemma Redgrave as Kate Stewart, and Kate Stewart's a character I've always been mixed on, at least in the new series. I like her in Downtime, the novelization where she's introduced. Well, okay, she's introduced in the actual special Downtime that I have only seen once and barely remember, but I do remember the novel, and I really enjoy that novel. And I like Kate as an idea, but again, Kate kind of has always represented just this fandom legacy of remembering the good old days without ever trying to examine the good old days or even make Kate Stewart a character outside of she's the Brigadier's daughter. And Davies has done actually a lot to try to rectify that in these last two series and in the 2023 specials quite a bit. Not perfectly, and we still have the big problem of UNIT is a powerful organization that is out in the open. Like, this story feels like a riff on the novel Who Killed Kennedy in a way, and the problem is that UNIT is no longer covert. And that's a problem. Like, UNIT is a giant tower, and so much of this is just because, like, so many of the problems of the episode are it doesn't work when UNIT is a big authority with actual governmental oversight. That's the big problem of the episode. I do like the twist. I think the twist is executed really well. Again, I liked Gemma Redgrave in the episode. I liked Millie Gibson in the episode. Shooty Gatwa gets an amazing speech at the end, and we're finally really establishing Mrs. Flood as an arc to be different from Susan Twist by mainly actively she isn't just showing up, she's actively doing things and having a plan, which I think is a nice thing, but knowing Davies and the general story arc thing, it's probably going to fall flat. I'm going to be going into the finale with low expectations, even though I like Anita Dobson's performance in that one final scene. Um, I also am glad we get to see Ruth Madley as Shirley Ann Bingham back. Like, I'm very glad that she's back. Um, even if she didn't have much. And I like that we get to see Ruby having both her adoptive family and her mother, her biological mother, that is, being together. It's nice. It's sweet. Trouble is, this is the Dr. Light episode, and I kind of would have traded this out almost immediately with anything else. Like, I would have loved another proper regular Dr. Phil episode. And I get, meet it on its terms. Um, Honestly, if you want to see this story done better and done more interesting, see the novel Who Killed Kennedy from the mid 90s. It's a version novel, so it's out of print. The author, David Bishop, did update it and extend it. I have not read the updated version, but I have read the original print, and it is a great novel that examines UNIT and essentially tells a story very much like this while doing commentary on the government and Doctor Who itself. It's really reflective, whereas this is really lacking. It's a confused episode, and I really it doesn't do a good sign for the spin-off coming, the War Between the Land and the Sea, where Pete McTeague is going to be the one writing a lot of that with Davies. Hopefully, Davies's influence will help better there because it didn't help here. It was just meh. I wish I liked it more than I did. But of course, my opinion. If you like this episode, actually, please go in the comments, and I want to know because I I do like to know when people have a different opinion than me and can articulate why something worked for them where it didn't work for me. Um, if you like more of me, you can check out Blood Donut Studios, where I am the co-host of Fresh Faced Comics, a comic book podcast where a lifelong comic book reader guides his friend through the world of comics for the first time, as well as my own blog where I do a lot of reviews, a lot of Doctor Who reviews, and Star Trek reviews. So, but other than that, I will see you sometime for the rest of the season. Again, I'm still a little iffy on when I'll be able to get things out. Hopefully the next couple of weeks will be fairly smooth, but then I know the finale is going to be a little weird. But until then, have a good day.